Now I'm absolutely delighted to be passing the baton to Jyoti Pande Lavakare, who's the co-founder for Air India. Jyoti, really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say as well.
Hi, my name is Jyoti Pande Lavakare. I am in New Delhi, India, and one of the most polluted cities in the world. Not proud to say that. I run a nonprofit called Care for Air. I'm going to just try to share my screen right here. See if we can get that up. Okay. So I am a former financial journalist. I used to work for Dow Jones Newswires for their South Asia bureau, and basically relocated from New Delhi to Palo Alto as a trailing spouse, and then back in 2009 with 2 young children, and found to my horror that air quality in Delhi had become much worse from what I remembered it from my childhood days and growing up years. Next slide. Wow, okay. So I don't know if you heard the introduction, but I'm basically a financial journalist, moved back to New Delhi with 2 young children in 2009, and found to my horror that air quality here had become terrible, and it was not, I mean, with 2 young children, I was terrified that we would all get all sorts of different diseases, but didn't really know how terrible it was, because my friends here who I had left behind, so Indians living in India, in New Delhi, seemed to tell me that, you know, this is how it is, we're strong, we build immunity, and it's fine. And my expat friends and my experience in Palo Alto's really clear blue skies had shown me that air quality actually, you know, I knew what clean air looked like, and this was not it. So with a bunch of other parents, we started a nonprofit called Care for Air, and that's careforair.org. You will find it on screen there. To spread awareness and build advocacy for clean air, and our mission was clean air for all. Unfortunately, although I knew a lot about clean air and air pollution, it didn't really stop this from coalescing in the lungs of my own mother in my own backyard. One of the reasons we had moved back to India was because both my parents and my husband's parents lived here, and we wanted to spend their sunset years with them, and to find that my mother was struck with lung cancer, which the doctors here said was clearly triggered by air pollution. Next slide, please. Kind of encouraged me to write a book, which I have called Breathing Here is Injurious to Your Health. Can I have the next slide, please? So essentially, Care for Air was begun by professionals. Mainly, we were parents who were lawyers or journalists like me, or public health consultants, entrepreneurs. And what we did was we started with the low-hanging fruit. We started going to schools of our own children, hospitals that we were associated with. We went to our own resident associations and basically tried to teach people. Back then in 2014, not a lot of people believed that air pollution did exist in India. It was because it's invisible. It was like, is this is this for real, or is this a hoax? So it was pretty challenging to go to schools and try and talk to teachers and parents and children. One of our colleagues, who's a lawyer with the Supreme Court of India, then petitioned to ban fireworks, which was one of the things we found the most unproductive way of polluting the air, was just to have fireworks for entertainment. And Diwali is, which comes around now, so around November every year, it's like Christmas in the West. It's when everyone lights these little terracotta lamps. But what has happened over the last 40 or 50 years, that firecrackers have become more and more and more popular for bursting on Diwali. And in the north of India, where you have cold temperatures in the winter months, all the emissions produced by firecrackers, in addition to the pollution load that exists through the year, was capturing all this pollution at breathable levels. And if I tell you the numbers that we've measured here, we've measured numbers of 3,200, that's 3,200 PM2.5, that's almost 320 times what WHO levels of breathable air should be for human beings to breathe. So we were literally living in a gas chamber, which is what the Chief Minister of Delhi many times called Delhi. So to come back to my story, I started writing this book once my mother was diagnosed and then passed away with lung cancer. We continued our work with Care for Air. We launched a student ambassador program, which basically took our Pollution 101 presentation to a more detailed, deep dive Pollution 201. And we took that, we're trying to do that at a more deeper level with high schoolers and college students. We are still unfunded. We fund ourselves, and one of the reasons now is that funding laws are getting more and more strict in India, so we would like to be independent. And so we continue with self-funding, and we have a lot of young people who work with us. Coming to cycling now, cycling in India is actually, in the rural areas, it's more or less completely functional, meant for transport. In urban India, it has two different sides. We still have the socioeconomic divide, where the poorer end of the spectrum will tend to use cycling for more functional reasons. But we have people in the higher end of the spectrum using cycling not just for mobility in a very small percentage, but a lot for exercise and health. In India, cycles start really cheap, about Euro 45, and they are the starting vehicle for many of the urban poor. Post-pandemic, cycling has gained a lot of popularity in Delhi and in India, all across all social economic spectra, because it is not just a physically distant way to travel, but also a physically distant exercise mode. Some sellers are, of course, reporting almost a 50% increase in sales, but the number that the All India Cycles Manufacturers Association tells us is about 25% increase in June, which is when India's lockdown first was lifted. Unfortunately, most of the country's infrastructure does not support cycling. And let's not forget, we're a developing country. Sometimes we don't even have roads, forget about dedicated lanes. We have pothole roads, even in a lot of urban areas. There is absolutely no lane discipline. There is hardly any road sense. And I'm not just talking about the drivers of the larger vehicles. I'm talking about cyclists themselves. Between poorly designed cycle lanes, which are sometimes taken over by street vendors, other forms of motorized 2- and 3-wheelers, and no traffic discipline, there have been almost 25,435 cyclists killed between 2011 and 2015. Even today, there are almost 16 fatalities reported, and nearly half of them are cyclists. The challenge is that and I used to be an avid cycler. I don't cycle much in India, but I do cycle whenever we travel to the West. Cycling is our preferred mode of transport, even as sightseers, and we love, my entire family, all four of us love to travel on cycles. So we have found that these are the few things that, we were talking about this and we've identified. Apart from the usual things in terms of safety, we find that there's a lot of broken glass, garbage, leading to punctures. You're not feeling very balanced. You don't feel very safe, even in terms of an emergency healthcare system, Good Samaritan laws. For example, I would be terrified of falling off and getting hurt on an Indian road, because nobody would even want to come up and help me, because the laws then sort of catch even the person who is being helpful in their clutches. And sometimes you're afraid to help the person just lying on the side of the road, especially as the cyclists. Even for overall safety, the usual sort of caveats apply here. I would actually not send my daughter out to cycle on her own, because not just the cycling bit, just the safety of cycling on her own would be something that I would find very difficult to stomach. Even cyclists themselves, a lot of I would say for a cyclist starting off at the bottom of the spectrum, just to get that cycle is a big expense. To get helmets, knee guards, reflectors, bike lights, and bells is something that they would very quickly cut costs on, and that does not lend to greater safety. The other thing is that in the north, and I'm talking mainly of Delhi and surrounding areas, it's either too hot. Temperatures can go up to 50 degrees in the summer, or too wet. I mean, monsoon rain we will come to the main thing that I'm working on, too polluted, because today the weather is perfect. I would love to go out and cycle, but I will not. Today's AQI, the PM 2.5, I'm assuming everyone knows what particulate matter 2.5 is. It is a tiny particle that is almost 1/30th the diameter of human hair. And it can actually, once you inhale it, it sinks deep into your lungs and can go to every part of your body through your bloodstream. So we know now that pollution does not just affect your lungs, but it can affect every single organ of the human body. So even when the weather, which is great right now, is outside is a good, I would say about 10 to 12 degrees, perfect to cycle, but it is so polluted that I don't even step out. I mean, one of the things that we do is we've been holed up and locked down because of the pandemic all these months. And now when the lockdown has been lifted, most of us who are aware about air pollution are going to be locked in even more, because we're going to be sitting inside our homes with our air purifiers running, and we are going to step out with not just the COVID 3-ply mask, but also the N95 or the N99 pollution mask. So it's not the best way to cycle. I have had in the last month, I have actually personally lost 4 friends who are cyclists, not to any sort of accident on the road, but actually to cardiac arrest. And we are actually wondering, and they were COVID negative, so we're actually wondering if these young, fit people actually were putting more pressure on their heart because of the masks that they were wearing. Currently, in India, cycling is still not cool. It's not a status symbol. Young people are beginning to take to it, but it's still not sort of the cool thing to do. You would rather, if you have the money, buy a motorbike rather than a car. And I think that's changing, but it still needs a lot of work. And I already went into the laws protecting vulnerable road users. So I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay, having said all that, I do want to say that to many of us, we know that cycling provides incredible benefits, not just in terms of sort of direct benefits to the cyclist, but also indirect benefits to the community. Bikes can provide critical support to urban and rural poor who don't have access to any other form of mobility. And, a lot of school-going children, as you can see in the photograph, will go to schools which are further away using cycles if they can so afford it. Okay, so there is this report that has been done by the Energy Research Institute of India. It's one of the few reports that has looked at cycling, and they have said that cycling trips actually currently account for a little more than 15% of trips in towns and a little more than 10% of trips in cities. So there is a lot of scope right there for increasing cycling, use for cycling. Currently, the government is much more open to creating infrastructure. In fact, we have had in Delhi, I'm already seeing many more cycling lanes coming up. Of course, the way those lanes work, they're intermittent. They just start off somewhere in the middle of nowhere and then they end off somewhere. So I'm not sure how much they're being, but it's still such a great thing to see these little green lanes come up, which I have never seen before in Delhi. So they're coming up now. We also have a national smart cities program where it would be great to have cycling embedded in a plan like that. And last week we had a brand new commission for air quality management that was set up by the federal government, by the Modi government at the center. And there is a chance there to embed pedestrianization and cycling within that as well. I'm also seeing a lot more, many more electric bikes coming up. I'm beginning to see, a lot of bike racks outside of metro stations. And currently, I mean, our metro, underground metro just restarted last month. So it's not as if there are a lot of people within that, underneath, underground in the trains, but just to have that last mile connectivity with bike racks, etc. outside, and a lot of, there are a lot of sort of, like Uber, you're getting a lot of bike rentals happening. So that's kind of an opportunity that needs to be built in, that needs to be further explored. Now, the same report that I was consulting, the Terry report, it does say that, because of India's mixed land use patterns, there are short commuting distances. And so it's actually, perfect for cycling when you have, they've said 60% of trip lengths in Indian cities are of less than 5 kilometers and 80% less than 10 kilometers, which makes this perfect for cycling. But we still need policy measures to create and provide large-scale safe cycling infrastructure and regulations on the use of private motorized vehicles, especially those which are the large trucks and the diesel vehicles, because they're not only unsafe for cyclists, knocking them off the roads, but they spew this sort of black smoke. So as a cyclist sort of following a truck or a commercial vehicle, you also have that additional air pollution sort of blowing straight into your lungs. We do need prioritized subsidies, tax remittances, microfinancing options, so that more and more people can afford to buy that first cycle. And I think if there were more studies and then more of this embedded, so the economic, environmental and social aspects of cycling, if that could be sort of talked about a little bit more in the public conversation, that would be great. So I'm going to now come to my favorite topic, which is India's dirty air. The latest report, which again came out last month, which is the state of, the state? I'm forgetting the name of the report. It's by the Health Effects Institute in the US. It's a nonprofit which comes out with this report, and it basically has said that in addition to the 6.67 million people who die from air pollution, of those 1.67 million of those are Indians, because we, unfortunately, almost the entire country has polluted air. I mean, Delhi is the worst. In North India because it has a geographical misfortune of the Himalayan range blocking the dispersion of poor air, plus the meteorological issue of air quality, of temperatures falling, and therefore the air. There's this thing called inversion, where cold air gets trapped. Cold air basically traps the polluted air closer to the ground. So we're ending up breathing. It's like compressing all the bad air at a level that human beings are breathing it in. So that happens every single year without fail, because it's as the temperature comes down, we're breathing more and more bad air. I think I'm going to just go through the rest of this real quick, because we have... I just want you to look at this. This is India Gate, right, in central Delhi. It's an icon of Delhi. But as you can see, this is a real photograph that actually a colleague of mine had taken, where he took it on two different times of the year. There's a small window of time when the rains wash away the pollution and the winds blow it away, which happens around March, April, and May, and then a little bit around August and September. And that's when you see those blue skies. This bit is what India Gate looks like the rest of the time. These again are real photographs and this you can see, this is somebody who is not even wearing a mask but trying to protect himself from the bad air. And if I actually raise the blinds behind me, you would actually see it looks just like that right now, because we're heading straight into an air apocalypse right now, which we do every single year. I think those are the end of my slides. That's the last one, which is again the state of, oh gosh, why can't I remember, Soga. I use it every day, but I just can't remember the name. It's told us that India has about 116,000 infants which are killed within months of being born. And of course, I already told you it's 1.62 Indians that are killed out of the rest of the 6.67 that Soga says the world is killing, the world's dirty air is killing. Just a couple of things that I want to say before I'm happy to take questions after that. But what I really want to say is air pollution in the past was seen to be a Delhi problem. Now we know it's not just a Delhi problem. It is an all India problem. It does manifest more in the northern part of India, where temperature variations happen much more, and there are more how shall I say, extenuating factors and sort of the perfect storm that happens every year, which starts with crop stubble burning in the northern states. It's like what the California fires were, or the Australian bushfires, except this time, every year, the farmers in Punjab and some of the other northern states actually light those fires themselves just to turn their acreage around to grow the next lot of crops. And it's the cheapest way to turn your acreage is to basically light a match to it. So, and unfortunately they do it at a time, earlier it was being done at an earlier time of the year where the winds were not heading, taking all that air and bringing it towards a densely populated Delhi and neighboring cities. It was just blowing it away. But now since 2009, there was a law that changed in Punjab, which basically was trying to preserve groundwater, and that actually directed farmers to grow their crops later and therefore harvest them later, which left them with a smaller window of time, which meant that they had no option but to quickly burn. The slash and burn has become sort of the normal thing to do. And now when you are harvesting later, by the time you're harvesting, the wind direction has changed. And so all the bad air, there are NASA photographs that show almost 4,000 fires on one single day, which then bring all the smoke to the most densely populated part of the entire world, which is North India's Indo-Gangetic Plain, as it's called, where it's the northern plain of India, which has the Himalayas on the north side, and so they're not able to disperse the air, and it's like a basin that traps this filthy air, which then we're made to breathe. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions, especially on air pollution. So please feel free. Thank you.
Jyoti, thank you very much indeed for sharing your experiences with us. And I think that really gives us an insight into your passion for clean air and the reasons underpinning why you set it up in the first place. So really phenomenal work that you're doing there. We just have a few questions. What impact has the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown had on travel patterns in India? And what plans are there afoot for India to support sustainable transport as a result? Has there been any impact there, or sustainable travel being seen as part of the solution?
I wish I could say yes. There's a whole, there's a whole thrust to actually try and move to pedestrianization, but unfortunately, I don't think that is happening as yet. There is some movement. I think there's an individual movement. Many more people are choosing to cycle. It's safer. It's physically distant. Not just for mobility purposes, but also for exercise and recreational purposes. I see many more young people out on the roads, but they do it early morning because everyone's afraid of the real traffic coming in. So COVID, unfortunately, and there are at least 4 different ways that air pollution can make COVID much worse for us, right? So people are very aware of that, but unfortunately, there hasn't been a push in trying to change our mobility. The only really good thing that the government has done in Delhi, at least in the northern part, is that they have come up with a new electric vehicle policy. So we are going to have much more of electric vehicle infrastructure. I myself have shifted to an electric car, which is, because I'm too afraid to. It's a death wish to travel. If I want to get on a cycle, I'm pretty much asking for it. So the next best way of walking my talk is to go for an electric car. And we've been one of the early users of an electric car, which has its own challenges right now because the infrastructure is not all there. But I think it's going to pick up, and I'm very optimistic of that part of it.
Is there any scope? I know that part of the conversation here has been, I think parents were imagining that by putting their kids in a car, that actually they were protecting them for air pollution. And there's been quite a bit of work done now in Scotland and elsewhere around actually cycling is much better because we don't clearly have the same air quality issues. But I don't know if is that a message that would resonate or is beginning to emerge, or that people are beginning to understand, because it took a while for that message to get across here.
So again, I think if the safety aspect of roads was taken care of, it would be easier to put that message out there. I think parents are only just beginning to realize how bad and how filthy air is just for their children to breathe. And again, these are behavioral changes that we're talking about, moving to cycling, moving to public transport. We're still at that stage where we're trying to get more people to move to public transport. I mean, I was the president of my children's school PTA, and we had a big job just there were 2,800 children in that school, and only 650 of those were using school buses. So we actually had a big job we doubled the number of buses, we doubled the number of children who were taking those buses by telling parents, and we measured it in front of them, that we showed them that by air quality outside the school cleaned up significantly when there weren't all those cars and the SUVs with the diesel fumes, and they're all at the level at which their children, when they get off the cars, they're breathing straight into that, they're breathing those fumes straight in. So it was a big job to actually even get that done. So I think getting them to use cycles is going to be like, whoa, that's going to be a big one.